Good morning, everyone. Before I entered the seminary, I used to work as an electrical engineer. And even though I didn't decide to go into engineering until my last semester of high school, I kind of always been fascinated with electricity. I remember when I was a kid, I used to stick things into the electrical outlet. Very dangerous, don't do that. And then my parents told me not to do that, but I guess that made me more curious what would happen. And I was just curious about it. How does it power everything? How does that work? I had a very inquisitive mind. I guess I still do. And yeah, I got nearly electrocuted twice. Nothing happened, thankfully. I don't know how, but nothing happened. But even when I grew up and I was studying in university, I almost got electrocuted twice also. And one of them was because I left the circuit board plugged in when it was supposed to be unplugged while my teacher checked it. So what do these stories have in common besides electricity? Was that I was not following the rules. And you see, those rules were set in place for a reason, to protect me and to protect others, because I was also putting others in danger when I didn't follow the rules of electricity. So it was only when I started following the rules of electricity that I was able to enjoy life, to enjoy electricity and electronics and all that, and live a more happy, full life. So what does that have to do with today's readings? We see in the first reading, Moses addresses the people. He basically tells them 4 things. First, he begins, "Now Israel, hear the statutes and decrees." Now the word "hear" said by Moses should immediately make us pay attention. Remember, hear, the Hebrew word "Shema." Hear Israel, Shema Israel, listen Israel. That's the first thing he says to them. Listen. Here. The second thing that he says regarding the commandments is to observe them. Not only to observe them carefully. So what he's saying, not only hear the commandments of God, but put them into practice. Then he goes on to say, regarding the commandments, that we had to keep them in our memory. So the third thing, remember them. Remember the commandments. And last thing that he says is, teach them to your children and to your children's children. So 4, teach them. So first thing he says, hear them. Second, put them into practice. Practice them. Third, remember them. 4, teach them. So this is coming from Moses. This is the attitude we should have towards the commandments. But what does he say as well? He gives some kind of promises, consequences of us doing these 4 things. Also 4 things will follow. He says, observe them carefully, that you may live and may enter and take possession of the land. That you may live. St. Enriquez said, the glory of God is human being fully alive. So when are we truly alive? When we follow the commandments. When we do those things that God has designed for us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He created us. So he knows that we're only truly happy when we follow the commandments. We're only truly alive, fully alive when we follow the commandments. So first, that you may live. 2, that you may enter in and take possession of the land. The land was very important for the people of Israel. It's the people that moved through the desert, that didn't have a place to stay. So finally, after this long pilgrimage, they settle in the land. And Moses says, hear them. Those commandments, put them into practice when you enter into the land, when you take possession of the land. But also when we see land in the Bible, it's also an image of the afterlife. That promised land, that everlasting life. when we will be in community with God. So it's talking about also about heaven, the afterlife being with God. So 1 is talking about life, 2 is talking about heaven. 3, he says, observe them carefully, for thus you will give evidence of your wisdom and intelligence to the nations. You will give witness of wisdom. When we follow the commandments and when we observe them, then other people will start to notice that our lives are different from the rest of the world. They will start to see that wisdom on the way we live our life. Sometimes we may preach, we may try to tell them someone, you have to do this. But I think it's very powerful when they see it in action in our lives. When the decisions that we take might be different from what the rest of the world might be doing. And all the other nations will start looking at our wisdom by following the commandments. So life, heaven, wisdom. And also talks about one last thing. For what great nation is there that has God so close to it as the Lord, our God, is to us whenever we call upon Him? So what is the last thing, the fourth thing that will happen if we follow the commandments? Closeness to God, that communion with God, that friendship with God, abiding in the life of the Trinity. That's what's going to happen when we obey the commandments. Life, heaven, wisdom, and closeness to God. So today's scripture is very, very densely packed. That's something that I recommend that we take into our prayer, we read upon and meditate, and see that the commandments are not a source of oppression. They're not here to enslave us or to control us, but rather to bring us to full life. So may God give us the strength and the wisdom to follow His commandments.